What does it mean to be human in a time of fast-paced technological complexity and change? Is the human condition transforming itself against the background of blossoming artificial intelligence? Will we one day leave ethical decisions to neural networks? Are new ideologies and worldviews needed to counterbalance technologically driven upheavals? What are the concepts for new paradigms and possible futures in a world where humans and machines define the world they co-inhabit? New philosophies, paradigm shifts in a machine-intelligent world.
So, very excited to be here to moderate this panel on new positions of the human with maybe the most fun panel I've ever moderated, a philosopher, a political scientist who's into science fiction, and a cyborg activist. So, they're going to speak for 10 minutes each, and afterwards we'll have a discussion on stage and then invite the audience to discuss with us and ask their questions. So, we'll start with Maurizio Ferraris. Who will give his 10 minutes, who is a full professor of philosophy at the University of Turin. He's also president of the Laboratory for Ontology and the deputy rector for humanities research at the University in Turin. He's been a columnist for La Repubblica, the Neue Zürcher Zeitung. He's published more than 60 books in a lot of languages. And right now, he's working towards the realization of a Scienza Nuevo, an institute for advanced studies at the University in Turin with the Politecnico University of Turin. And the institute is dedicated to Umberto Eco.
Thank you very much, but I have, because I was in disease because I was not seeing the appearance of my technical device. Without them, I am without resource. So I am, it's a form of evident case of technical dependence, and in a sense, I have no other word to add in order to speak about the connection between humans and at least professors and machines. But my subject, I decided to speak because we heard a lot of worries and of talks about the problem of privacy. All data are now in a possession of companies, and who knows what they do, and there is digital control, and so on and so forth. But note, the most important problem for me is not the control or the surveillance. Also because often it's not a real surveillance because it's without punishment. Suppose that someone buys a Kalashnikov on Amazon. Amazon does not go to the police saying, hey, buy the Kalashnikov. Simply the day after says, who buys this item usually buys pistols and bombs and so on and so forth. So it's a peculiar way of surveillance. It's not a Foucaultian way. What is more important, at least in my eyes, is the fact that we are working on the web, much working than in any previous time. And it is on this point that I want to focus my talk. Because, you know, this is the typical claim on Amazon. Again, I am not an anti-Amazonian. It's only a typical example. The fact that there is an exploitment of people on Amazon, they are the new slaves, and so on and so forth. After years and years of similar news, then we have the news that Amazon found a new machine that can avoid to having employees that package the books. So there are no more slaves, at least in Amazon. Of course, there were protestations against the slave on Amazon, and now there are protestations on the fact that there are no more slaves in Amazon. But the most important thing is that this is in general the destiny of humanity with the web, because the web allows a kind of automation that can succeed in a perfect way. I mean, Alexa is not spying what we say. In a sense, it's ridiculous. Someone is at home, his wife and his children never pay attention to what he says. The only one is Alexa that hears. But even this is not for spy reason. This is in order to implement software that can achieve a complete automation. This creates something that is philosophically interesting. As you know, Keynes, about a century ago, said that in our century, a 15 hours per week 15 hours per week will suffice for any person. We don't need to labor more than this. But seemingly, happens something different. We have the feeling of working 15 hours per day. How so? This is the philosophical matter that I want. And in the same time, as you know, in 1995 appeared an influential book whose name is The End of Work. And about 20 years later appeared a book whose title was The End of Sleep. How so again? End of work and end of sleep in the same time. So there is a big philosophical, political, and economical question. Why are we tired if the work is disappearing? In fact, it's not exactly the work that it is disappearing, but it's the fatigue. We have the evidence. Now people run, we see a lot of people running. 50 years ago, it wasn't so. Why? Because they were doing works that were sufficient in order to burn calories. Now is no more the case, and people run. But this not means that disappears the work. In a sense, we have the revelation of the real nature of labor. Look at this picture. We have two animals. There is no special gender-driven idea of putting a lady. I can put myself, imagine I am myself. So you have two animals. The animal on the left is a rational animal because is there for economical purposes. At the very end of the story, will eat something. And the other animal, the animal on the right, on the opposite, is a singular situation, because since, say, 20 years ago, it would not be working. It was really a free moment in the park. Now, she is working. She is working because it has its own invisible chain that she bought with its own money, and that relies the lady with the other animals invisible, and she is producing value in that very moment, which was not the case 20 years ago. This explains what I call the docu-media revolution, namely the fact that we are a transition from the commodities to the documents and from the labor to mobilization. I discovered I have just 2 minutes left, so I have to do another revolution in my talk in order to say that now what we have to think is to conceive in this transformation labor as production of value, and we have to pay labor as production of value, because what is labor when you have no more to make fatigue and alienation? First is invention. We had before, 2 centuries ago, the question, what can do the painter in the age of photography? And the answer was, you have to have a new thought for the object. Now it's the same for humanity. What we have to do in the epoch of automation, invention, have new thought for the object. And for instance, this is also interesting. And this is the second major point of the transformation, is the mobilization, namely the fact that for the first time in the history of the work, sleeping became a work because it produces data. It produces useful information. So mobilization should be paid, and we have to conceive this transition from the classical labor to the mobilization that makes that working time is equal living time, from intellectual labor to manual labor, and it's also the end of alienation in a sense. But is not the end of labor. And then, the most important, we have to conceive that the main task for humanity is no more the production, but is the consumption. The reason why we are not cannot substitute a human is because only human can be subject of consumption. You can invent a machine that produces sushi, a machine that brings sushi at home, but you cannot produce a machine that eats sushi, or at least you can do this, but it makes no sense. So this is the point on which we have to reflect. We have to rethink completely the human nature and rethink our goal as labor, as consumption much more than production. Of course, one asks, who pays? This is the good question. Well, it pays the plus value which is produced between the type of information we give to the platforms that are very rich and very important, and the type of information that the platform gives us, which is less important and less relevant from an economical point of view. This could be a kind of plus value, similar, even if different from the classical industrial plus values, that can be used as a basis for a digital welfare in which the consumption is the new work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next input talk we'll have by Moon Ribas, who's a Catalanian avant-garde artist and cyborg activist, best known for developing the Seismic Sense, which is a sensor which is implanted in her feet, which allows her to feel not just seismic activity on the Earth, but also on the Moon, which means she's here and somewhere out there at the same time. And she translates that into music and dance performances. In 2010, she co-founded the Cyborg Foundation, an international organization that aims to help people become cyborgs, defend cyborg rights, and promote cyborg art. And she co-founded in 2017 the Trans-Species Society, an association that gives voice to non-human identities and defends the freedom of self-design. So she'll be telling us about that.
Cool. Okay, yeah. I feel like very far. I think I'll go closer. So yeah, as Shidol, I actually identify myself as a cyborg because I have some implants in my body that allow my senses to go beyond my natural senses. But everything started, okay, I'll explain the beginning. I was studying actually choreography and dance, and there's many things that happen around us that we don't perceive. And I knew that if I unite myself with technology, I could perceive all these imperceptible movements that happen around us. And I did some projects. First, I did a project uniting myself with technology in order to detect the speed of the people walking in front of me. Then I did another project to feel if someone was getting closer to me, so I could feel like retroception, like feeling presence behind my body. But then after experiencing this movement that I had around for a while, I wanted to perceive a more universal movement. I thought, if I would be alone in the planet, how could I perceive movement? And then I realized that actually the Earth is constantly moving, not only rotates around itself, around the sun, but it shakes constantly through earthquakes. And I thought it would be fascinating to be united to this huge and natural movement that most of the time is imperceptible. So then it's when I started the project of the Seismic Sense. So now I have these implants inside my feet that are connected to online seismographs, and whenever there's an earthquake anywhere in the planet, I feel a vibration inside my body. Depending on the intensity of the earthquake, the vibration I feel is stronger or less strong. So now I'm here in Berlin, but if there's an earthquake in Japan or in California or in Greece, I would feel a vibration inside my body. And I call this the seismic sense, the sense of feeling the seismic activity of the planet in real time. At the beginning, of course, I had to get used to feeling all these vibrations constantly. So at the beginning, if I was talking, I would feel a vibration. I would like stop talking or be like very distracted. Or like if I was sleeping, I would wake up more often. But after a while, I got used to having all this new input. And a way that I have to describe it now is like I feel like I have two beats. I add an extra beat inside my body. I have the heartbeat, but then I have the earth beat. Like this, the beat that has its own rhythm. And it's the Earth itself. I see this as cyborg art, the art of creating your own senses. I think now artists, we no longer need to use technology as a tool. We can use technology as part of ourselves and change and design our own perception of reality. So my artwork is actually the seismic sense, but it's an artwork that happens inside the artist. So in a way, I'm the only audience of my own art. So everything happens inside the body. So in order to share what I feel, I create performances. One of the pieces that I do, it's a dance performance that it's called Waiting for Earthquake. So it's a bit like a waiting room where I invite the audience just to wait with me for an earthquake to take place. So it's a bit like also like a sculpture. And whenever there's an earthquake, I move according to the intensity of the earthquake. So it's a bit like a duet between the Earth and myself. Earth actually is the choreographer of the piece, and I'm just interpreting the data that she gives. So this piece can last 10 minutes, or it can last hours because it's based on real time. Another way that I have to translate this is through percussion. So in this case, Earth is the composer of the pieces, and the rhythm of the rhythm of the piece is based on the rhythm of the tectonic plates. A way that I have to do this is like I create scores based on the seismic activity that happened in a specific place. For example, the first one I did was in Mexico. So I researched all the earthquakes that happened in Mexico in the last 50 years, and I put them all together in a score that looks like this, because I'm actually not a musician, so I just do it like this. And it lasts like around 10 minutes, so the people from Mexico could hear how their country had been moving seismically. Apart from that, in 2010, with my childhood friend Neil Harbison and I, we founded the Cyborg Foundation, basically with three aims. One was like to help humans to become cyborgs. The other one was to defend, to promote cyborg art as an artistic movement. And the other one was to defend the cyborg rights, the right of designing yourself and creating your own organs and your own senses. Some of the projects that we did in the Cyborg Foundation, we were invited to go to Brazil for a week. And actually, I have a tooth missing in my mouth, and Neil had another tooth missing. So we proposed we had like a week with working with these like 15 engineers that knew a lot. And then we proposed to do not a normal tooth, but like a very different tooth. So we create something that I implanted in my mouth, and then another tooth was implanted in Neil's mouth. And whenever I click, he would feel a vibration, and whenever he clicked, I would feel a vibration. So we both know the Morse code, so we were actually able to communicate from tooth to tooth by clicking our mouth. And we call this a transcendental communication system, because we actually, like from tooth to tooth, we were able to communicate. And actually, it was created with Bluetooth, so it was actually a Bluetooth tooth for real. We also like the poetry about it, and this was like the performance that we did to show the first tryout. I was at the end of a table, and it was in the other table, and then the audience would write a word, and then I would pass it to Neil, and he would write the word. So it was like the first tryout of this communication. Of course, this was very basic, but actually it could work for people who cannot move at all, or maybe it could work in space because you don't need air to communicate with each other. But yeah, and then we did. We have a lab in Barcelona, and we create a lot of sensors also. We call it sensors because through these new sensors, we know better the planet we live in. Actually, I said a lot of times, now that I identify myself as a cyborg, I don't feel closer to robots or to machines. I feel closer to nature and to other species. I think it's very different to know that the Earth is moving than actually to feel that the Earth is moving. So now I feel more connected actually to the planet. And I think also that we can admire and get inspired by other animals and the senses that other species have and how they understand the planet we live in. Yeah, we call this the creation of these new senses, and we don't think that it's virtual reality, augmented reality. We call revealed reality because through these new senses we can reveal a reality that exists, but we cannot sense. I also identify myself as a trans species because I have a new sense and a new organ that is no longer defined as a human sense or human organ. So I don't feel 100% human because I have something more that it's not human anymore. Like actually in the logo of the Trans-Species Society, it's a circle that it's not closed. And I really like this logo because it defines our idea of human. Like for us, human is not a closed circle. I think we haven't always been human. We used to be a bacteria, then we were animals on the sea, we went on the trees, now we are human, and then maybe we'll become something else. So I think the evolution and the transformation it's a natural part. And maybe the union between technology and humans, maybe it's something natural, and we shouldn't be scared of not being human anymore. Maybe not being human, it's also something good. And yeah, I just want to say that maybe also we have arrived, like for many, many years, humans have been transforming the environment in order to live more comfortable, but maybe we have arrived on a time that we should design ourselves in order to live more according to the planet needs. Now that I've been feeling earthquakes for so long, I realized that actually it doesn't make sense to build big cities at the edge of the tectonic plates that actually are very dangerous places to live. Maybe if instead of using artificial intelligence, if we all had night vision, we wouldn't be wasting so much electricity and energy, and we wouldn't need to light up half of the planet when it's actually more natural to be in the dark. If we all had controlling our heat, we wouldn't need to heat up the planet, and we could regulate ourselves. So maybe the design of ourselves it's an option for the future. And yes, the presenter said, my current project, actually, I cannot feel the activity of the moon in real time. But yeah, it's a current project that I want to connect to the seismic activity of the moon, and this actually allowed me to be physically on Earth but having my feet on the moon. And actually we call this to be a senstronaut. We feel like we no longer need to be physically on a space in order to explore it. We can remain on Earth and have a new sense of explore space while we are here, so that I think it's more comfortable, no? And yeah, just to end, I think we are the ones who need to make sure that actually the union between technology and humans doesn't alienate us from nature or to other species, but actually bring us closer to nature, other animals, and also to space. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Moon. So our last speaker is Dr. Isabella Herrmann. And Isabella is a political scientist and discourse analyst who is currently acting as the research coordinator of an interdisciplinary research group called Responsibility, Machine Learning and Artificial Intelligence at the Berlin-Brandenburg Academy of Sciences and Humanities in Berlin. She explores how artificial intelligence is framed in the discourse and how the use of AI systems affects society. And she's always been fascinated by societal effects of new technologies, so she publishes and talks a lot about science fiction, which I hope she'll also tell us something about today. Exactly, and the project that she's working on right now examines ethical and legal challenges associated with the use of AI systems and makes recommendations to ensure that the focus of the technological developments are based on human. Please.
Yeah, so welcome everyone. As you can see, I really hold on to the template, yeah. So I will talk now about AI politics and ethics. So this was in fact the title that was given by me and to me. And as you can see, it's a really broad title, so I try to at least mention all of these terms in my talk. But I will mention the Terminator and also show you some illustrations of the Terminator, so don't worry at all. Yeah, to increase the challenge a little further, I will start with a quote who also doesn't mention one of these terms. So let's see how this is going. There was a time when humanity faced the universe alone and without a friend. Now he has creatures to help him, stronger creatures than himself, more faithful, more useful, and absolutely devoted to him. Mankind is no longer alone. Who said that? It was Dr. Susan Calvin. And Dr. Susan Calvin is the main fictional character from Asimov's robot stories. He wrote in the 1950s and that are located in the 2030s, so still in our future. So why does she say that? She's a robo-psychologist. So obviously she says that because in the future the robots follow some ethical, I mentioned the word, guidelines. Namely, the 3 laws of robotics by Asimov. So the first fundamental one being a robot may not injure a human being, and then the others being subordinated according to the numerical order. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, and a robot must protect its own existence. So, question to the audience, who of you hasn't heard about the laws of Asimov until now? Okay, some, but I guess the majority has. Always ask negative questions. So the majority, I guess, of you have heard about the laws of Asimov because they're really popular in the discourse when it comes to robots, machines, and even AI and ethics. So the question is, if they're so popular, can we just program machines to hold on to our ethical standards or even be better humans, like we have just seen in Asimov stories or also in Star Wars, where we have those 2 little guys that are really devoted to humans, or in Star Trek, where we have the android Data, who, yes, oftentimes seems to be the only one who holds up the values and ideals of the Federation and Starfleet. Yeah, can we do that? Unfortunately not. So why is Bender laughing so hard? I mean, Bender, you maybe know him. He's the robot from Futurama, who has kind of a questionable moral compass, to say the least. So why is he laughing so hard? Because the laws are a joke. Or put it more elaborately in more sophisticated words, they're a narrative means to create some original or bizarre or exciting situations to kind of keep the story going, to make it interesting. So that tells us that, in fact, those stories are about humans and not about technology. They are stories written by humans for humans. And when you go a bit further and talk about AI, so how would you ever program an abstract goal which is ethical into a machine? Because machines right now learn from data people have created and have selected, and there are no ethical machines because there are always humans behind it. So even it's just the data. So let's dive a bit more into the narratives that are established by those kind of fictional stories. What kind of narratives are established there? So first of all, those fictional narratives don't present us a positive future. It's rather the exception. So mostly, the kind of stories that are told are dystopian and are really negative and show us, a not so good outcome of the future. And one tendency I have already mentioned with the Asimov story is anthropomorphism. So, which means that AI is presented as human-like. So you see in the corner, this is the film version of I, Robot by Asimov. There's the robot Sunny, which is really human-like. And you have also films like Ex Machina or a series like Westworld, where the robots are really played by humans. So if you think a little about that, it's actually super ridiculous. So why would a robot be played by a human? But this shows us again that it's really about humans and human dramas and stories for humans. And then we have another strand, which is artificial general intelligence, AGI, where we have this whole narrative about AI rising, about singularity, about conscious systems, and this is rather HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. But it all ends up with a war or a fight, humans against machines. And this is also reflected in the real discourse. So just remember those guys on the slide. Now we have again Sunny, but he is kind of the template for an AI system. So an AI system is epitomized by human-like robot. We have Elon Musk building on Terminator fears, and then The Guardian illustrating those Terminator fears with the Terminator. Now, I guess I mentioned Terminator kind of 5 times. I did my job. And we have, which I like best, Kissinger's article, How the Enlightenment Ends. And there we have HAL 9000 kind of mixed up with some Masonic signs. So there must really be kind of a conspiracy of AI systems going on there. But those simplified narratives distract actually from the fact that it's not about humans versus machines, but it's about social power structures. It's about humans in society and in political systems. It is about politics. So AI can be used to establish surveillance states that fulfill a certain ideology. AI systems can be used to establish or already strengthen a system of digital capitalism where the social good is no longer defined by democracies at best, but by platform or social media or internet companies. And with the use of AI, people get scored and discriminated. So we all know this kind of data algorithmic or automation biases. And this is relevant. So I'd say this is not relevant, but this is relevant. So to end this up, I'd say there is no divide between humans and machines, and there are no human-like machines, and there is in fact no inherently ethical or just or good or whatever AI. It's that behind all technology, even with AI, there are people behind it who create, build, and apply it according to their worldviews. And in fact, it's our task to see that this development of AI is on us. So we as society, we as kind of politicians, activists, whatsoever, we decide on the course the technology might take. So it's not outside of society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all three very much. So in terms of, are we seeing a new human condition? Is there a new position of the human? We have human as data, as capital, how maybe we became the batteries of the apparatus that we built ourselves. And I like the full-time consumers. We can get back to that. We have human as extended, trans-species, evolving, free from limitation and senses and biology, in a sense. And we have human as human, if I understood Isabella right. Is that maybe in the end correct? If we would, like, it's not, if you would have to answer the question, are we witnessing a new human condition? You would actually say no. We just like to tell ourselves stories, and we have new machines that we have to play more responsibly with.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that machines are there to assist or enhance humans, but it's not that they take the place of humans. This is actually the main argument or the main thesis.
Okay, so are we changing position in any way? Are we evolving with that, do you think? Or do you think we're just still playing power games with our toys?
At least you can see that in the discourse. So if you kind of talk about arts, right? We have always kind of this humans against machines. So will machines be so creative that we don't need poets anymore, that we don't need artists anymore? And this kind of discourse doesn't lead us nowhere. So it's something that kind of is within society. I mean, actually, we are not that far away, I guess. It's something that happens within society, and it has an effect on power structures within society. But I'd say that this whole human versus machines is a distraction from what's really going on. And I'd say that also some kind of Silicon Valley pioneers or some academics, scientists, artists, they really play with this because they really want to distract that there are always humans behind it. So this is kind of a power game, you know? But in fact, it's always on humans. And humans playing those power games.
So maybe we're also asking the wrong questions, you're arguing. Because I'm going to bring that back to the guy who has a lab for ontologies, which I love so much. Because I would say, I come from a design background, and I would say we, of course, always evolved with technologies. I mean, literally, our brains evolved, our senses evolved, our physically we evolved, and so on. So we always designed things, and then those things always designed us back as well. So hence also the changing ontologies and changing. Would you say that we're witnessing a new human condition, that we're moving into becoming something different than what we have from the ideals of the Enlightenment and humanism? Or is it more that we're just sort of framing that as a narrative right now?
I would say that there are two main views on the relationship between humans and technology. The one, which is a very widespread view, says that technology is an alienation of humans. We are humans as such, we are naturally humans, and then enters something different, which is the technology, which is bad, is a kind of gift, useful but also dangerous, and transform us, leads us to do things that we don't naturally do, and so on and so forth. I have another idea that technology is basically a revelation of what human is. And technologies are part of the ontological, if you want to speak about ontology, ontological definition of human. Think about the enigma that the Sphinx makes to Oedipus. He says, what is this kind of animal that in the morning works with 4 legs, and then at noon with 2 legs, and in the evening with 3 legs? This definition implies the technology into human definition, because only a human is such a kind of animal that needs technical supplement. I am full of technical supplement. For instance, without these glasses, I am a living cyborg, but since the very beginning, and we all are human cyborg, because if we were in the savannah with lions running behind us, we cannot make a conference on the future of humanity and developing languages, culture, and so on and so on. This makes part of technology. So, in a sense, human is, since the beginning, a post-human, in the sense that is a post-animal. Animals are usually well-formed. They have their milieu, and they know what to do, and therefore they need less technology. Since we are in Germany, I will quote the famous dictum of Nietzsche, who says that human is the animal not yet stabilized, which is in fact, we are animals that are not yet stabilized, that needs society, needs Aristotle said that humans are naturally speaking animals, and the mobile phone shows this, are naturally social, and the social network show this. That's all.
So in the end, is there a fundamental change happening, or is it just continuous evolution?
As usual, I make a long discourse without making a true answer. No, it's all the same. It's all the same. It's the eternal recurrence, and we will go on until the end. We will be on this track.
Thank you. So we can end the panel now. No. Let's bring it to the self-proclaimed trans species. Very nice. I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, also about, since you're also an activist for cyborg rights. So if we take this as an evolution, as we've always continued to evolve, as you also argued, and now we just are using the technologies, as you said, not just as a tool, but also as an art. Can you talk a little bit about cyborg rights? Because it was interesting from the images that you showed also. It reminded me you're doing this when you operate things, you're doing it in a medically safe way, right? So you're not DIY body hacking, you're doing it with medical help, or?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Not really, because it's not illegal. You say it in English, illegal, but it's, I guess, illegal. No, there's no laws against it, because people, I mean, there's no big society doing it, so there's no laws about it. That's why it's there. But actually, well, I was commenting, no, like I'll share this, that my friend, he had to have surgery, because mine is like just a cut under the skin, so it's okay, you can do it in a very small place. But actually he has an antenna implanted in his skull. I don't know if you know him, I'll explain very fast. So he has this antenna implanted in his skull that transforms color into sound, so he can hear color through vibrations in the skull that turn into sound. And actually he's like, for me, when I explain like to be a trans species, because you have a new sense or a new organ, I always put like his image, because he actually has an antenna implanted in his head, and antennas are not normally human, they belong more to the animal world. So he has this new body part that belongs to the animal world, so that's why we like transforming a bit the human species, or that's how we feel. And actually, when he went to a hospital and asked to a doctor if he could be implanted in the skull, they said you have to talk to the bioethical committee. And then he talked to the bioethical committee, and at the end, the bioethical committee said no. And actually, they gave him 3 reasons. One, that it wasn't necessary. The other one, that it was dangerous. And the other one is that they were worried about the image if someone walked in as a normal guy and come out with an antenna. And then actually, we found that there's like a parallelism with the transgender community. Actually, in the 20s and the 30s, if someone had the body of a man but wanted to be a woman because the identity didn't reflect the body they had, if they wanted to have surgery, the hospital said the same thing, that it wasn't necessary, that it could be dangerous, and they were worried about the image of someone coming in as a man and coming out as a woman. So I hope in the future it will be very normal to have new senses and new body parts, and that people accept to use technology not just for medical reasons, but also to experiment and to design your own perception. And about the cyborg rights, okay, so yeah, we defend the cyborg rights, like the right of creating your own senses and your own organs. Also, yeah, maybe imagine like, for now, the surgeries that we do, it's just like people that like nurses, or actually the first ones I did, it was the body hackers, those people that modify the body. I mean, there's many people that do more extreme things in their body. I feel like I'm more like a mind hacker than a body hacker, you know, because my aim is to modify my perception and my mind, and in order to do that, I use the body, but my aim is not to modify my body. I also think that for me, it's not, you can identify yourself as a cyborg even if you don't have technology, as you said, like have a friend who doesn't have any technology in the body, but he says that everyone is a cyborg because we have the Hubble, that is a satellite going around the Earth, so we all have a third eye on space. So that's why I think it's an identity, and even if you have technology in your body, maybe you don't feel that it's a cyborg.
It just becomes very interesting, very real, very political, very legal questions, you know, when it comes to these things, like exactly I had the idea with transgender as well as the relationship.
Yeah, no, I didn't talk about the rights either. Wait, sorry, I was like, I get distracted too. So, because we think that if a society, they unite with technology more and more, then we would need rights to protect the people that unite with themselves. And actually we presented some cyborg rights in Southwest some years ago. And we thought, like, especially if you have internet in your body, like one of the dangers is that you can be hacked or not. So, for example, there's a law like protecting, allowing like who enters to your body or not, like that you cannot be hacked. Also, like for example, if someone pulls Neil's antenna, for example, that this is considered physical aggression, not just an object. Also, actually, here in Berlin, there's this person that actually has a cochlear implant, and he wants to hear beyond the human range, and he cannot do it because actually this implant belongs to a company, not to themselves. So it's like all this right that making, if someone is in your body, then it should belong to you, not to a company, because then they have. And there's another law that I don't remember, but yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea if it brings it back to the discussion of going beyond humanist ideas or not, since that's always what these things come down to. You know, if it's still protected by the basic ideas in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or if you need a Universal Declaration of Transhuman Rights in the future. We'll see when it gets brought back to those political questions. So one of the questions also within this briefing was, where will, I would say maybe should, we leave ethical decisions to neural networks in the future? Isabella says we shouldn't. Is that correct? Because actually there's anyway always humans behind the system. But since there's increasingly, of course, machines which are learning and knowing and following, you worked a lot with ethics and AI, so maybe you can say something about, also because it relates maybe to this, like you just said, bodies opening up, bodies can be hacked. We have that right now with digital pacemakers already, you can hack hearts. So we're opening, as we open up technologies, we're opening up ourselves and our bodies to technologies. Of course, these questions of ethics and AI come up a lot. But what are the things that we have to take into consideration there from your work on ethics and responsibility in machine learning?
Yeah, I mean, you said we should not transfer kind of decisions to machines. I mean, we should not, we must not, we cannot. I don't really know. But the question is actually that we should be aware that there are humans behind it. So, I mean, you could even say, I mean, really, this is the first thing to get, because people always think that you have kind of an AI system or a machine and it learns from data, and then it's somehow kind of objective. And it's not. So you could have this example, which is not my example, I took it from someone else, but anyhow, you never can build neutral technology at all. So even if you say kind of build me a table, so this is the easiest task, right? Build me a table. So you can build a rectangular table where we have the patriarch sitting at the top and kind of oversee the whole dinner, or you could build a round table where everyone can sit and have the same status. So just imagine this with a table, and then you have AI systems. So it's really who selects the data, what kind of data is selected, are the programmer teams diverse, are the coders diverse? And sometimes you don't even realize that there is bias in the data. So that's the first thing, to be aware on that. I mean, there are so many examples, There is kind of this guy with dark skin who was categorized by Google Photos as a gorilla. Because why? Because there weren't enough people with dark skin in the data set, so it was not recognized by that. So this is actually the first thing, that you have to be aware about that. And then the question is how to regulate it. And I'm really pro-regulation. I mean, I think that in a world where we believe in democracies, I mean, if we change kind of our conception of good governance, I mean, we have to or can decide otherwise. But if we believe that good governance is kind of provided by democracies, I think it's really the responsibility of the state to set some rules. Because right now we have a lot of ethical guidelines by companies. I mean, Google has its own guidelines. There is kind of this partnership of AI where they all in, Facebook, Google, Amazon, whatsoever. And this does not suffice, because it ends where this kind of ethics contradict with profit. And if you see kind of the first ethical guideline of Google is be socially beneficial. So do we want Google to decide what's socially beneficial or not? Because this is a commercial company and they have all the data. So they can kind of decide what to do with the data, who's going to be nudged, what kind of information is provided to a person. And yeah, I see kind of a philosopher, Metzinger, a German one, who was also member of the high-level expert group on AI by the European Union. He's talking now about ethics washing, that you have all those companies really engaging in this kind of questions to really try not to have state regulation, hard regulation. And I mean, I cannot tell how to do it, but just to be aware that there is no neutral technology and that we need somehow regulate that if we still want that we live kind of in a world where democratic systems, if we believe in that, count.
Okay, so bringing it back to state regulation. But if we are all just data anyway, being capitalized on, and that becomes our new role, you had a tactic of consumption. Is there a way that not just one thing is at a government level, that we can make regulations through policy? Is there also a way that as humans we can hack back? You had an idea on consumption, 24-hour consumption? What can we do there?
If it is possible, I would add something to the question of who decides, because I perfectly agree we have to be conscious that behind the machine there is a human decision. And that's the problem, not the machine. Because when we speak about the human, we usually think, when we compare human and machine, there is the stupid machine and the human full of virtue, a kind of conscious, ethical lawyer, which is not the case. Human decisions are biased by prejudice, by ideologies, by other factors, and it's in this point we have to reflect much more than saying, oh, the machine will take the power. Because I'm completely, and I come to the other question, I'm completely sure that there are two anxiety for the contemporary humanity. The first is the machine will take our work, and the second, the machine will take the power. The first is perfectly right. The second is perfectly wrong. Machines are not interested in taking power, not at all. Forget about HAL and so on, because in order to need to have power, you need to have a body. Only an organic body could have this need of power, or can be bored, or have this immediate necessity of consumption, because there is a basic difference between, for instance, take two system that uses energy, that burns energy, and dissipate it. The first one is an hairdryer, so a machine, even if simple, and the second one is a Docq. From, from a morphological point of view, they are quite similar, but if you forget an hairdryer in a room for 1 year, then you get back to the hairdryer. It was off, you make on, and it works, which is not the case for the Docq. And this basic difference makes that organisms have need, have kind of urgency, have kind of need. Therefore, I say that consumption is the only thing that cannot be automated. Mm-hmm. And what to do with consumption? We have to understand that first, with your mobilization, because every act we do now is recorded. This is, in a sense, fine, because it allows a full planification of economy. The dream of a Stalinist economy now can be accomplished, and it reduces prices, a lot of things. But what to do in the moment in which there is this gigantic difference between the information you give and the information you take? It's a difference that has some analogy with the difference with the plus value I advocated when the classical worker in the factory works 5 hours for himself and another 5 hours for the owner of the factory. This was the classical Marxian plus value. Now, we are not even aware of working, but we produce value. I find it very well, because you cannot say, oh, this alienation, and say, is it the same alienation to work in a factory doing always the same gesture, or staying the weekend looking a series of Netflix without stop? Yes, it is alienated, but it's not the same alienation. And is producing value. What is important, for instance, in the previous panel, it has been evocated the case of China. China as a central, as a billion of smartphone users that makes everything with smartphone, and this means a gigantic centralization of data, which is the real capital of 21st century. And this allows China to distribute the plus value you can find, of course, in an authoritarian way. I believe, to come to, for instance, for Europe, Europe is 500 million of persons. I believe that if European Union make a discourse to the GAFAM, to the say, we are perfectly fine with what you do, but you get a lot of money. What about socializing part of this money so that we can improve a new European welfare? I'm sure that this problem of populism that is so strong in Europe, and especially in Italy, because can be solved by this.
Okay, because exactly, I wanted to ask to come to what kind of, which was one of the things in the guide to this panel, what kind of future societies we can imagine, and you're getting very much onto that. So of course also in times right now with the future of work discussions where, you know, the speculations that 60% of jobs will be automated, taken by AI, and the Internet of Things is tripling in profit, and all these things are happening at the same time.
Yes, I'm sorry, but
go please.
In principle, there are very, very few jobs that cannot be automated. I believe that it's silly to watch at a soccer game played by automa. It's stupid. So, if you are a player in Bundesliga, your work is guaranteed. But not the majority of humanity is not a champion in Bundesliga. What to do so? What is interesting is that even if we don't work, we produce value.
We just need to get the profit, part of the profit back.
Yes, so that if we conceptualize the work not just as fatigue and alienation, but as a production of value, then we can recognize all this gigantic production of value that is given for free now as work, which give dignity to people. Is not just a salary for because you and answer the question what to do in the moment in which the works that really are needed, not automated, are an immense minority. In a sense, we are now coming to a society, because we have often a bad dream, a nightmare about the future. Not so optimistic, but consider that a full automation can create a society who is a close imitation of classical Greek and Roman society, but they had the slaves. And we have the machine. All the work was done by slaves in Roman aristocracy, and then what they do? Deciding instead of machine, cultivating, maybe have a love affairs, I don't know, but it's also not bad. But in any case, a fully automated society can be closer to this kind of, say, classical ideal, which was based on a cruel reality of slavery, in this case there will be no slavery, but politics and thought has to think the way to distribute the plus value. Otherwise, we are going to wars and social hate and so on.
The question is, we get a new class system based on who has fast internet and can upload more. But yes, Isabella had something to say to that?
I agree, and I wanted to jump in there because I'm criticizing always these dystopian discourses, but I tend to also kind of engage in them. So with the future of work and future societies, I think it's so interesting because, I mean, in fact, in the media, always you have then a robot, right? A robot is stealing my job, and the best is a robot with headphones and everything, which is, why does a robot need headphones? I don't know. But actually it's software, right? Software is gonna assist us and actually kind of, well, there is this 3D work, dull, dangerous, and I'm missing the third D, but I mean, there's this kind of repetitive work we don't want to do, and machines and systems could assist us that we can really engage in the interesting stuff. And when people are so afraid that their job will be done in the future by a machine, what does this actually mean? That means that I think right now I do a work that can be done by a machine. I mean, isn't that horrible? If I have a job which is so dull and repetitive that I'm afraid that a machine can do that. So I think we really need a whole new discourse that this liberates us. And I don't understand why political parties don't really get into that kind of a better future, new visions with tech, but they really into this fearful discourse. They say, oh my God, people losing their jobs and they don't have money and I don't know, what do the people do? So maybe we also should redefine what a status in society means. Maybe if I do some social creative work, that should be rated higher. But this is kind of a process that needs time. But I really, maybe I need to found a party, I don't know, but it's really, I don't see why whole programs are not directed towards this, a better future with tech. Let's liberate us from the hardship of dull work. So it's really, but it doesn't happen, but yeah.
There was an encouragement.
Yeah, so
maybe now it will.
If I found the party, please join me.
Yeah, I agree actually with what you say, and I think it's because of fear, no fear of the unknown. It's the same. It's of course it's not the same, but it's with immigrants or refugees that the people have the fear that they will lose the job, but they won't get the job. It's just the system that doesn't protect the people. So I also think that we need to change the political system because it's not adequate for the times we live. Definitely not.
Which probably also comes back to the discussion of what it is that makes us human anyway, because that's probably these old narratives of what we think it is that makes us human. In the same case, also with you changing your organic body and people then thinking that that's not human anymore, and so it goes into post-humanism and transhumanism and so on. I wonder if that was really what made you human, and you seem pretty human to me still, So if it's not rather changing the definitions of what we see as being human. Is it maybe your empathy? Is it your, what is it about you that...
Yeah, or I guess maybe it's more individual. That I think, well, we talk about also, like maybe in the future would be much more diverse. Now, I think more or less society accepts that it's not just the people can identify in other way, not just men and women, but there's many ways of defining your gender. So maybe also if you are human or not, like 100% human, or like if you unite to technology or not. So I always imagine that in the future would be much more diverse, and then we need open like to our minds and our laws and like our systems in order to allow all these new identities to exist. Yeah, I was going to say something and I forgot, sorry. I need a paper like you.
You need a technical assistance.
Yeah.
Humans always need technology.
Yeah.
Maybe you can build it in your hand.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to open to the audience for questions. We have another 15 minutes. Here's a question in the front. There's a microphone coming to you.
Ja, schönen guten Tag, Karl Carstens, Advisor von Auditory. Ich habe eine Frage zu. Jetzt muss ich die Brille
I have a
umlegen.
question.
So, wen haben wir denn da? Achso, zu Herrn.
Who is this next
Ferraris?
to Mr.
Ferraris,
Ferrais? Mr.
Und
Ferrais.
vielleicht auch Dr. Isabella Herrmann.
And maybe also Dr. Isabella
Diese
Herrmann.
verlängerte Leine hat mich auf eine Idee gebracht.
When you talked about this
Zu fragen. Diese
long,
verlängerte Leine, die,
this chain,
die sehen wir
this
jederzeit,
extended
fast jeder
chain,
Situation.
we see this in every situation nowadays. For example, when we get out of the train and there are lots of people in front of you who are looking at their smartphones, they're looking downwards. And this is like an extended chain. They don't see the reality anymore. Even though if you're 50 centimeters apart, you don't see the person in front of you. So my question is, the digital future, is that our future of the lost human values? For example, respect or, mutual respect.
Can I can directly answer. Well, you see, usually there is a typical moralistic stance toward this kind of line of people as staying under a total mobilization, like it was a military situation. You can think it as a kind of military situation. And if it is so, I could say, well, on the one hand, in fact, we have several examples of humans that were guided under a total mobilization, also without smartphone. So that is not surprising that humans can act this way. Humans reveals themselves acting this way. We are not people full of ideas, originals, independent, that at a given moment receive a bad gift from the technology that transforms themselves in slaves. We are so and so, therefore we use this kind of devices. What I would say is, since humans are constitutively, in a sort, dependent from technology, then we have to recognize this as a matter of fact. What is human is a question that always requires that human is an organism integrated with technology. Without technology, you don't have humans. So instead of this kind of technology, you can put other technology, for instance, rifles, but the result will be always the same or even worse. So the future of humanity is to increase its own capacity of being free, and in these increases of capacity of being free, the freedom from work that is given by the automation is the most important moment. Because, for instance, to make an example, now you say on the social network, people say stupid things or racist or sexist things and say, we were hoping about the collective intelligence, we have the collective stupidity, what a pity. Of course, humans are so. There is humans do not become to be stupid with the network. We reveal ourselves by means of networks. But if we have time to cultivate ourselves, to free ourselves from stupid and repetitive works, then we can attain this kind of freedom that only culture can give. So I agree with you. It's an ugly image, this series of people marching like soldiers looking at their handy. But on the other hand, think about the cultural revolution that can grow from this situation.
I just got the end of it. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no.
No. That I think it's about the technology that if it will make us more empathy or not. But actually, I think maybe it will give us more empathy, because now that if we have more senses in order to understand better the Earth, for example, then I create more empathy towards the planet. If I get a new sense that another animal has, then I create more empathy towards the other animals because I understand better how they live. And I actually think that in our society there's more people like that have more empathy towards the animals, like even more and more people are vegetarian and more vegan. So I think in the future people will respect much more the other species and also the planet. Of course, there's people that don't, but actually I think also it becomes of politics because this it's not that productive to be that way. They cannot win that much money, so it's a bit of the political system. But I think actually technology can help us to create more empathy, because then we can understand better where we are, where we live, and the other species, and we can create more deeper connections. That was the only thing.
Yeah, and to add on this, I mean, if you have those people with smartphones, right, but you don't know what they do, I mean, they can post some hate speech or talk to their mom or write with their mom or, I don't know, read newspaper articles or play games. And according to my knowledge, there's no really research kind of which proves that now the ethical standards are lower. I mean, actually quite the contrary. I mean, when you have surveys with young people, they tend to say that kind of certain ethical standards are higher, actually, and these are the digital natives. But what I think is kind of a problem, but this also can be regulated, is kind of the scale, because you always have had echo chambers or filter bubbles. I mean, in the past it was kind of a village and there was just one person who went out and came in and kind of told what she experienced. Or also when you have, I don't know, human resources, right? I mean, there were always prejudices selecting the people. But right now it gets automized, which means you have also negative feedback loops. So it's really a question of scale and dimension. This is what I see a problem with these new technologies. But this also is a thing you could regulate, and this is not that I'm always kind of speaking out for regulation. I mean, this is really an achievement of our society, that we have institutions. I mean, technology always was regulated in the past and will be in the future, and maybe, yeah, we maybe need to solve this problem of dimension and scale, but there's kind of, I don't think that there's people are less ethical anymore. I don't see that.
Second question, here in front. There and there, yeah.
Me? Okay. I have a short question. It's a rather practical one, actually. And it's, if you, Ms. Ribas, go to a hospital to have anything done, do you have to carry a sort of like organ donor ID to let doctors know that you have implants that they might not be aware of? Because obviously there can be a health issue if you're, you know, if you're getting an MRI or something.
Well, that's a good idea. I don't have that ID, but that's a good idea. We could have. That could be the thing. Yeah. The thing is that usually the things that we put in, it's usually like it's biocompatible, and we try like, you know, that it's not like like this. Yeah, you're right. I should have this card. I will propose this to the studio that we have. That would be cool.
Yeah. My question sort of stemmed from like my own personal experience. I think many people my age, or at least I can say that, like the first time I connected with technology, it was not very well thought through. I just kind of like slid into it. And I was wondering, you, Ms. Ribas, in the very like intimate way that you connect with technology. I mean, it's a new sense for you. It's an organ. How do you reflect on how that changes you? How do you design and pick a sense? Like I understand what you said about like wanting to be connected to movement, but how? So there's actually like two aspects to this. So like how do you design it from the technical perspective, and then the other thing is like how do you design it? Like, how do you go through this process of figuring out, like, if you have a broad sense of what the seismic sense should be, how do you figure out how it's supposed to work? How does that shape and change you? How does that process work?
Yeah, it's a very it's a very long process. I think the hardest thing is to find the sense. No, I mean, there's many things, and so. And also, like from the Cyborg Foundation, we try to think that the beautiful thing is actually to find that everyone can choose what to sense. You know? Like for me, it makes sense because I was doing choreography, but what would you like to sense? What would you like to sense? I mean, there's so many things. And for me, this is more exciting that I don't think that everyone should feel earthquakes. I feel that everyone should feel whatever they want. And for me, yeah, it was a long process. I guess because I was in college studying movement, I knew that I wanted a sense that it was related to that. And then, yeah, I did other projects always related to the peoples of other people's movement. And then, I don't know, I guess I got tired of people. I was like, I didn't want my sense of movement that it depend on others. And then it's when I had this image, it's like, what if I am alone in the planet? And then I realized there was this huge movement, and most of the time perceptible. 99% of the earthquakes we don't feel them. And it really fulfilled me, this idea, because it actually connects to nature, which I love, the movement itself, and this new dimension. But this is a very personal, because I don't know about technology. I always think more about the experience, and then I go to an engineer and say, do you think that's possible? Because actually the technology that we use, it's very simple. We're not like super, I mean, for example, the first things I did with the speed of the people walking, it was like some sensors that you use to dry your hands, for example. And how I use it, it's very simple. I asked to all the data from the seismograph goes online. So for an engineer to make, every time there's a new data, to make something vibrate is nothing extraordinary. It's just that instead of doing technology for your phone or for your cars, if you add this technology in yourself, then your experience changes. But I think it's a long process. Usually, sometimes we have some artists in residence in our lab, and sometimes it's more about analyzing yourself. And for example, I have a friend that he's developing like a new sense that detects the atmospheric pressure, and if this changes, you can know if it's gonna rain or not. So he's like the weatherman; he can feel the weather. And then he analyzed what he wanted to send, and he was like very obsessed always with the rain and with the water, blah blah. Blah. And then through this, so I guess it's a bit of the back journey of you. And then also, like, because it's so experimental, no one has done it before. Like, for example, the first time I had the fields that we call it exosense because it wasn't inside when I first did it. So it was always outside. So I just put it here because it was far away from my vital organs and it felt like the safest on my arm. And then I put it up, and then even I did the implants here. After, and then I realized it didn't make any sense to feel earthquakes in my arms, no? Because I was like, if humans really had this new sense, they would have it on the feet, which is the part of the body that touches the floor, and then I changed it. So everything is through experimenting. Yeah, sometimes I feel that I thought a lot about what to sense, but I guess I didn't think too much about how to feel it. I knew it makes a lot of sense to feel it through vibrations. But about the organ design, like for example, my friend has the fins, Neil has the antenna. For me, it's not like something that has to stand to be outside. So for me, I kind of like it that it's a bit hidden, because I don't need any immediate, so I can feel things that happen very far from my body, so it doesn't need to be outside.
Are you actually an open source cyborg? Like if I wanted to feel earthquakes, could I? Is like the code online and how-tos, or do you keep it very personal?
Yeah, all the online sites, this data is online for sure. Yeah, you can check.
A last question, I think we have there.
Paderborn University. I wanted to complicate the dream you all voiced about a free of labor society through automation a bit. And to keep it short, because we're running out of time, over there's a beautiful graph in the art section that illustrates that there's not just a human being behind technology in the sense of designing, programming, and so on and so forth. There's many human beings behind technology that do dire labor in terms of labeling data, controlling all the bad stuff that emerges on social media, mining rare earths, assembling all our technology, building all the technology, and so on and so forth. So when we think about how technology changes the human condition, I think we need to look at a global scale, because right now, unfortunately, on a global scale, in the current global circumstances, automation is actually more important, more expensive than human labor is in many parts of the world.
Yes, of course. On a human scale, automation is less convenient than human. But this will not be the situation for the future centuries. Our direction, if we have to think about a direction for humanity, and I believe that is necessary to have this, what is the direction for humanities? An increasing automation and a decreasing human labor. China is an example for this. It is, China at the beginning was the typical outsourcing for basic works not automated, and in the time will be less and less this and more digital labor and production of value. I'm not saying, well, of course, if you go to Africa, it is uneasy to find people that runs in order to burn calories. But this will happen. If there is a destiny for humanity, this is the destiny. We should hope and we should prevent and organize in order to distribute justice. I don't see any, of course, we can say there is a lot of injustice, there is a lot of places in which is not yet so, but we have not to simply say what there is, but what should be. And what should be, in my eye, is the end of labor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then I would like to thank all the panelists very much for their insights.